If you're having problems making your characters and backgrounds look like they belong together, well, this is the video for you. We're gonna play Matchmaker for our art. Hey, Walter here, and today we're gonna learn how to get our characters and backgrounds to match up. If they look like they don't belong together, it's probably because the perspective of the background isn't the same as the characters. Your colors could also be working against you, so I'll talk about that at the end of the video as well. So here's a big trick to becoming more comfortable with drawing objects in perspective, and that's don't care about perspective, or at least stop thinking about it so much. Instead, imagine yourself in the actual panel you're drawing. If you were in that room, that city, that forest with your characters, where would you be? Floating above them, standing on the ground, laying on the ground like a weirdo? The second thing you need to do is think about everything like it's a simple shape, and that's really important. Watch my Shape Up Your Art video and practice all that stuff. Also check out my must-know perspective tips video. Learn how to freehand draw boxes, cylinders, spheres at any angle or perspective, because if you can do that, you can draw a human or a car or a jet at any angle or perspective. Do those two things and this will get a lot easier with a little practice. So let's do a little brain training and imagine this scenario. There are 9 boxes in the scene and you're standing eye level with the middle row of boxes. By the way, eye level is your horizon line. You would only be able to see the front and sides of the middle box. You'd see the front, sides, and bottom of the top boxes, and for the bottom row, you'd see the front, sides, and top. This isn't so much knowing perspective as it is intuition from being a human person that exists in a three-dimensional world. If you floated up to be eye level with the top row, you can no longer see the top and bottom of the top boxes, but you can now see the top of the middle row. And if you lay on the ground, it's the same, but in reverse. If you can understand and recreate this, you can draw whatever object in whatever scene. And don't get me wrong, this is hard. It flexes your brain muscles. For most of us, this is an unnatural way of thinking. Our brain says this isn't a three-dimensional box. It's just 7 lines on a piece of paper. It takes work to make our brain imagine this as a box we can rotate in our imaginary three-dimensional world that lives on our 2-dimensional canvas. It takes time to understand how to angle these 2-dimensional lines to create the illusion of 3 dimensions. We could also let the boxes drop to the ground so they stack on top of one another. We know the bottom of the middle box aligns with the top of the bottom box, the same for the top box and the middle box. We also know the front and the sides line up. From here, we could start pushing the boxes around, even off of other boxes. And when we do this, we use a consistent frame of reference to guide us in drawing these lines to make up the shapes that we're manipulating in our fake 3D world. In this case, the constants are the sides of the bottom box and also, most importantly, the ground. The ground itself is really just a bigger box, right? Finally, it's important to note that as we lift these boxes up to eye level, we'd start to see less and less of the top of the box. As we raised it higher than eye level, we'd see more and more of the bottom. Of course, this is also true as we push the boxes away from us or pull them closer. And this is simply just because objects appear to get smaller as they move away from us. Now let's apply this to drawing characters in backgrounds. I think we've got 2 potential problem scenarios. One, we have a really cool background and we want to add a character into it. Second scenario, we have a character in a cool pose and we want to add a background. So let's start with that one. Say we have this cool dynamic down shot of our character and we want to draw them inside of an ancient ruined temple. First thing to realize is we are looking down on this character, so we as a viewer are above the character. Our eye level or horizon line would be up here, maybe even off the canvas, but we don't really need the exact location. First things first, we need to get some sort of frame of reference. Our hero here is the frame of reference, but they're pretty much a complicated shape, so let's give the hero a simple box to stand on. We intuit the box based on the character, most importantly their feet and the line that's created between them. Once we have this box, we could now start adding boxes to the first box as our frame of reference. Instead of drawing all these boxes, let's just continue these lines out to infinity to create a grid, and that gives us the illusion of a 3-dimensional ground plane. At this point, we just start stacking boxes or just drawing really tall boxes, using the grid to help keep everything properly aligned and sized. We can draw a box that stretches from the top of a box to another box, and just draw a bunch of boxes Of course, this doesn't look like the ancient ruined temple that we wanted. Now it's just a process of cutting out and building up more complicated shapes from these simple shapes. You can turn them into columns, tables, or even people. Check out my perspective tips video for more details on that. Eventually you need less and less pre-building. You can skip a lot of this and you'll just draw the final object. It's like when you're a kid and you start math by using your fingers to count 2 + 2 = 4, but eventually you start doing the math in your head. It's the same thing here. You gotta flex your brain. Imagine that box sitting in front of your face and imagine moving it around below eye level, above eye level, to the side. If you're unable to picture things in your mind, then go back to the lines, go back to that grid, and just trust those lines for what you're doing. You can still do all of this even if you can't see the ground plane. Just place a box above your character's head or around their head or entire body and continue out the lines in the same way, except this time you're below the grid. Draw out all your boxes and then add complexity until you have the final objects you want. Same with the low angle shots. Draw your reference box, your grid, simple shapes to complex shapes. Now, if that made sense, you're in luck because the reverse scenario is pretty much the exact same thing. If you start with your scene instead of your character, you use something else as your frame of reference, or you just draw a box on the floor. Stretching this box up, it can become the basis for a human figure. And if you watch my perspective tips video, am I pushing that video too much? Well, if you did watch it, you'd know how to draw other humans in the scene, even if you can't see their feet touching the ground plane. You'd also know how to determine the height of a character by using the height of other objects in the scene. Drawing a low angle or a high angle works out the same as it did with the character first scenario. Something else you may want to do is draw your character sitting in a chair. This is the exact same thing as well. The chair is just a box and you're putting another butt box on that box. Instead of feet on the ground, it's a butt on a seat. The chair legs also identify the ground plane, which you can use as a reference for your character's feet placement. You could also be having problems coloring your background so that it matches the character's palette. One reason could be that your background may be pulling more attention than it needs, and that takes away from the scene as a whole, making it too complicated and hard to read. You don't want every object in an image to be screaming for attention. So watch my easy coloring video for a way to color your panels and avoid this. However, a quick fix is by applying a single low opacity color layer over the top of your background colors. This is what the layer looks like before we change the layer mode to color and lower the opacity. This creates a uniformity in the background and overall image that will keep the background in the background. You can also lighten the background colors to help wash it out more. This is a quick cheat to apply atmospheric perspective, which is as things move further away, there's more atmosphere between us and the object and they start getting hazy looking and a little blue. You can also make them darker if it's a night scene. Now, remember, you keep your foreground element colors unchanged in most cases. Sometimes you may need to apply a color layer to the foreground if things still look weird. Now, another trick is keeping the background line weight or the line thickness thinner than your foreground elements. This is going to help fade the background so that it blends a little bit better. This is a thicker foreground line and this is a thinner background line weight. One final method to push the background back is color holds, and this is a technique that gives color to black lines. So we could lighten and color the lines that make up the background to help blend it into the colors that we already did. There are different ways to do this, but my method is simply select all of the background lines using the lasso select tool, create a new layer above the line layer, fill it in with a color, and I'm doing a medium dull yellow. Now make that layer clip to the line art layer. This makes our color hold only affect the layer that it's clipped to. So instead of making everything yellow, it only makes the lines yellow that are in the clipped layer. In Clip Studio, click on this button. In Photoshop, hold the Alt key and click on the line between layers. If you have a different program, Google your program and clip layers, or just Google your program and color holds. So we get this blended, harmonious palette versus all these competing colors that we started with. Hopefully that will help you with drawing your characters in your environments. Now, I know it may seem like a lot, but it's not really. You know, just start simple, a box on a box, you know, draw it on the side, on the bottom, and you just build up from there. So it's not complicated, but it is hard. I mean, you're reprogramming your brain. It's gonna be hard. Now, is there stuff that you're still not understanding about all of that? Well, right after you subscribe and like this video, make sure to let me know in the comments what your struggles are, and I'll do my best to help out in another video. Or of course, you can check out my Patreon to get access to my secret Patreon only Discord and some other helpful stuff there. Finally, if you want to keep making comics easier, be sure to like, link, love, hug, and hit that sub button for more sweet, sweet goodness. And instead of spreading negativity and tearing stuff down, let's lift up the things we love. Catch you in the next video. Peace!